Okay, maybe that's a good topic to get into then. Why do you, so what is privacy to you and why do you care about it? And why is it an issue that like a 12-year-old today would just completely not care about keeping their online identity private?
I don't think it's 12-year-old. I think it's a 25-year-old. They post a whole sorts of information online about themselves that allow them to be manipulated in ways.
Have you ever seen concrete examples of
I think
issues?
the Russia hacking U.S. elections is a great one. There's things that goes on in social media. There's a girl downstairs who was talking to us about what is it called? Computational propaganda. Amazing stuff. How you use computers to propagandize people and target them with information that makes them make decisions that wouldn't necessarily they wouldn't necessarily have made.
Wait, what does that mean though? Okay, there's a few different things, right? It's like one is if I'm a politician or something and then I have some information online which someone finds out which I don't want to be made public, then they can now blackmail me or whatever. If I'm a regular person, you can imagine a smaller version of that, which is I know all the stuff about you that you don't want your family to find out, and if you don't do this for me, then I'm going to tell your family, for example. But I don't think that's the kind of thing you're talking about.
No, I'm talking about misinformation campaigns, about targeting people based on their biases to allow them, manipulate them into doing things that they wouldn't have done without that piece of information. So we are autonomous beings, and we make decisions based on our information sets, and manipulating that information allows you to force people, not force people, but push them into directions that they wouldn't have otherwise done. And so voting for people like Donald Trump because you believe he's patriotic when the guy clearly has no interest in what American interests are. He's a personally interested person, but there's a whole host of Americans who believe he's patriotic. He puts America first, making America great again. He cares about making Trump businesses great again. He is clearly cares not about the general American interest. So how do you convince people to act in a way that is in accordance with a false piece of information, a belief that bears no relevance to reality?
So is this kind of the same idea as like with Facebook? If you know which organizations I like, and I think it's like once you get past 20, then you can run an algorithm and essentially predict my personality type or put me into these groups, like my ocean personality type, and then use that to target me.
Yeah, they can segment you in pretty precise ways and say this type of language is likely to make you react with this sentiment and this emotion.
That's interesting then, because do you feel like not posting things to Facebook is a way to protect against that? Or
no, not really. I think that the better way is to make sure that a range of actors have access to this information and target you with a range of information.
So then I'm curious about where your motivation for privacy comes from. So
it's about everyone has different privacy preferences, right? It's like how much are you willing to pay for a certain good. Everyone has different reservation prices, and the market price is the price that maximizes quantities, right? And so you have the same issue with privacy. People are willing to disclose certain amounts of information, and you should have a market for that information. You shouldn't force everyone into the same box. You should be able to allow some people who have lower preferences for privacy sell their information in a way that is transparent and safe and lets them make money from it. And you should have people who don't like their information being on the market take control of it and prevent other people from buying it and targeting them in a way that they don't appreciate.
Yeah. No, I agree with all that at a high level. That's fair enough. But I'm more curious about, so in general, we are moving towards a world which people seem to care less about privacy. Like in 2017, people...
Based on what? Who says that we care less about privacy?
Based on the fact that we're willing to share a lot more personal information online. Like people are
Who says we wouldn't have been willing to share this information 30 years ago if we had a social network? People put their phone numbers in the phone book. Right. That would allow anyone to contact you. You could look it up in the Yellow Pages and say, hey, John Smith, I found your phone number. Do you want to talk about getting together and discussing American politics? You know, how much we hate Hillary Clinton or how much Vladimir Putin is influencing American elections? There's nothing stopping people from doing that 30 years ago with the phone book. There was no internet. You had a phone instead, and that was the main communication mechanism.
Okay, so you don't necessarily think that people... I
don't think people's privacy preferences have changed. I think what's changed is the tools that allow you to disclose these preferences. And what we don't understand is and then not just that, it's the technology that allows us to exploit the information that you disclose. So suddenly this information that we are giving away willy-nilly that 30 years ago, if you were disclosing on a phone call with one other person, you had no value.
Yeah.
suddenly it's extremely valuable. You can use that information to monetize in a range of different ways. And so basically people are giving away things that used to not be valuable that are now valuable.
Okay, that's an interesting way of framing it. Yeah, because it's like previously, if I spoke on the phone to someone and I told them something that was relatively private or personal, then unless they remembered it or wrote it down somewhere, it's basically gone. Whereas now, if I share a message with someone,
it's a piece of data that describes the world. Someone can use that to manipulate this world or extract benefit from it.
Yeah, because the usual case against privacy or case for privacy that I hear is Nazi Germany and having, entire lists of people. Or maybe that's about centralization, but essentially it's like if there is a malicious actor and there's a lot of information about you that's widely available, then suddenly they have a lot more power than they did before. So if someone knows your address, then they have a lot more power over you than if they don't know your address, for example. If they are, but that assumes that they are malicious or
it assumes that they're willing to use violence effectively.
Yeah, exactly, or blackmail or threats or things. But it seems like you're
violence.
just in general
violence, but violence.
But your complaint is more about power between these big organizations who have use for this data versus.
Well, I think the risk is less that someone is going to use physical violence. I mean, I don't hide my face from Facebook because I think someone's going to come and attack me.
Yeah, I
don't have that many enemies. I'm not important enough to have that many enemies. So that's not really the risk. The risk is that by accident that some nefarious actor comes around to your information. So I've actually had my identity stolen in the US.
Yeah.
There's some guy who got my social security ID and created a bunch of fake credit cards in my name and racked up a bunch of debt in Florida, which I haven't traveled to in 7 years. So I had to contest it, and it was a bit of a nightmare. But it's no real hassle. It's just a nightmare, right? It's like it doesn't affect my life in any way. I'm not unable to take out credit cards or anything like that.
But it's just relatively non-minor.
It's like a mosquito you swat away, right? This kind of stuff is going to happen all the time. But soon it's going to be much worse, right? You take someone's identity, soon you'll be able to do a whole host of things, more than taking out credit cards and racking up debt that is easily dischargeable, right? Soon you're going to be, the number of things that are terrifying are endless, right? You can mimic someone's voice, you can mimic someone's face, you can mimic someone's facial expressions, you can create a video that artificially pronounces things, and
right. So someone could call up your family and be like, "Hey, Ben, and I'm running late today" or something, even though.
And because people react to this type of information, just like they react to disinformation, they could have a whole host of knock-on effects where your personal network does a number of things to react to this. The implications are quite frightening.
It's super interesting. I mean, because the argument that I've heard more commonly is, or actually one counter argument is that because we live our lives online now, and everyone has a Facebook, everyone has a LinkedIn, everyone has all of these markers of online identity, that it's actually more surprising if someone doesn't have those. So I remember a few years ago, people were saying you should make sure that your Facebook is super clean, because if you're applying for a job interview, they might look at that and judge you based on it. Whereas now the message seems to be almost, if you don't have enough of an online identity, that could be seen as a negative, or people would be a bit suspicious that, or would be a bit concerned about whether you're telling the truth about the things that you say, because, if you did do these things, then you would have evidence of it online, and online is the place now where all that evidence lives.
That's funny. I mean, I still think the risk is that you disclose too much.
Okay.
Personally, from job applicants, young people out there for a job,
it's much safer to disclose less.
Less risky for sure.
Even if you come across as anomalous, or it's like, oh, here's a software engineer who's been working for 5 years and has never written a blog post. Oh, how weird. Maybe he just hasn't learned anything in his 5 years.
Absolutely. I would say disclose less. You can validate people in a whole bunch of different ways. Most businesses have access to actual validation, identity confirmation processes, right? You give your bank details. You don't need this online information. So I would say for sure disclose less.
Okay.
There's no risk in disclosing more. The only downside disclosing more. That's the whole point, right? Is that we're disclosing way too much, and there's no benefit accruing to individuals for disclosing this.
Yeah. Okay. Let's come back to that because I have another point. But also, are you concerned about Facebook and organizations having access to machine learning facial recognition, where now suddenly it's like all of this data that wasn't super useful before because it would just take way long to crawl through all of it, right, is now possible because you can just get a machine learning algorithm to figure out all of the places that Ben was and can, make all these conclusions about him based on it.
I think it is scary. I mean, so there's a startup that I came into contact with who basically had you could take a picture on your phone, hold up on the street, walk up to someone in Trafalgar Square and take a snap of them, and it would reference their Facebook profile. So it would say, here's the person in that photo, and here's all the information about them. Yeah. And you could do all the stuff that Facebook allows you to do. So that to me is pretty strange. But is it strange or dangerous? That's the question.
It's also not that far away from you meet someone at a party or something, you get their name, and suddenly now you have access.
Absolutely.
To
well, I met Ed Zapario on LinkedIn. I read about him in The Guardian and hit him up on LinkedIn and said, I'd like to talk to you. And he said, come to the house. And that's how I met you and loads of people. So
so actually this comes up to my other point, which is that I worry that by disclosing less, you're kind of excluding yourself from society.
You are.
Because society lives online nowadays.
You are. It's a trade-off. It's absolutely a trade-off.
But surely it's only going to get worse. It's like as more and more moves online, it's like the less presence you have online, the less of a civilian or person you are, because you're just not reaching the level. You're not reaching the kinds of people that you need to reach. People don't know who you are.
Your influence is less pronounced without an online presence. I think that's
and not even just influence, but involvement and awareness, or
your knowledge, your being, your living is. That's why millions of people do it, right? Everyone goes online because it enhances their life. So by excluding yourself from these things, are you adding that benefit? I think it's a balance. It's a trade-off. So what's the right trade-off? I mean, I don't know. I've probably gone too far by not having a photo on me online of me. You search for me online, you won't find a photo of me. 90% of people that I search for, I can find a photo of.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
but I mean, to me, it's like part of this bigger point though, which is that as technology progresses, you kind of often throw away the old infrastructure that you had. So now that all events are publicized on Facebook or online and things, if you go to the same notice boards that you would have went to 10 years ago or 20 years ago, or the same like library notice boards or whatever, or churches or whatever the infrastructure was for publicizing events, right? You're not going to find these things on there. So you will kind of lose a lot of the old stuff that you had, in the same way that when you get Amazon, you start losing bookshops, and as you get essentially like the old ways of doing things gradually disappear. Like your library has fewer books in it now because less people use the library.
Sure.
Even though it would have been a great source of information pre-internet.
Well, I think that's not true. I think in the US actually that library membership rates are up in many parts of the US, and particularly among millennials, which is quite unusual. You wouldn't expect that, right? But actually young people. What's that? Free Wi-Fi. So the free Wi-Fi. Yeah, I think that might.
Old people go for the terminals. Young people go for the
Wi-Fi. In many, I just read in many American states that the use of public libraries is up significantly among millennials, and it's probably pre-Wi-Fi. It's probably right. So I'm not sure that usage of libraries is declining, but I take the point necessarily. I think this is a problem that we've overcome with technology, that we'll continue to overcome with technology, right? I mean, IBM estimates that something like 90% of the data has been in the world has been made in the last 5 years or something, or I forget what the exact statistic is, but that's only going to get worse, and that exponential function is we're going to ride that higher and higher. So in the next 2 years, we'll get another 90% of the data, right? So the richness in which we can capture the world is increasing. Yeah. And whereas, in times of Gutenberg, the printing press, all you had was handwritten text. And so the way they describe the world is the only way we can understand it. Yeah. Whereas the data that we collect today about the world, we can only infer so much about it. But in 10 years, more advanced algorithms, more advanced people will be able to infer more about the current state of the world, and therefore be able to learn more about how to make better products. It's kind more technology.
Yeah, it's quite scary. I mean, it's also like reaching towards an infinity, though, because there's so much. If you actually sit down and think about it, there's so much data in theory that you could collect. Like the conversation that we had downstairs, like this is somewhat online if we decide to publish it, but even the conversation that we had downstairs, or whoever else we talk to is not online anywhere, is in some ways not recorded anywhere. And I do think that there is a little bit of a worry, which I was talking about before, which is anything that's not recorded on these mechanisms that we have, we assume just never happen.
Yeah, you lose it completely. Yeah. So imagine the amount of data that you lost, right? I mean, the key. So there are economic historians who argue that the reason that you had the Industrial Revolution in Europe at the time you did was a direct result of the printing press, the technology that allowed you to record knowledge in a way that created compounding effect, whereas you could build on previous generations and what they learned. Or before you had the printing press, the cost of recording knowledge, of creating data that described the world was so prohibitive that you had no accumulation of knowledge over time. And this printing press invention that reduced the cost of accumulating knowledge allowed you to compound it, and in effect created the waves of innovation that generated steelmaking and weaponry that drove the Industrial Revolution, right? The compass, map making, advanced cartography, these technologies that allowed societies to produce wealth that were previously not possible, was in many ways a direct function of the printing press. And so what you have today is the same function. You have exponential increases in the rate at which knowledge is accumulating, because we can store so much information about the world, so much data about what's going on. And just because we can't make sense of all of it right now, it doesn't mean that at some point in the future someone else will be able to. Just like, we didn't learn everything from Max Weber or Adam Smith when they were recording these things, handwritten, 300 years ago. We're still learning from them. And just like that, the data that we're recording today, that people are posting on Facebook, the likes, the dislikes, the articles that you share, we will continue to derive knowledge from these data sources.
That's interesting, because I think over the last 5 years there's been this whole big data revolution thing, which as a buzzword I think is slowly going down now over the last 2 or 3 years, where big data was this huge thing once upon a time, and now gradually it seemed as though people were learning that even if you have big data, like into the terabytes and stuff, a lot of it is not super useful for insights or for actionable insights, and
most of it's probably not right now.
Right.
But that doesn't mean we won't be able to use it in the future.
That is what a lot of companies have been doing, right? Which is
it's a big data grab out there.
So cheap to collect data. So
massive
you just
data grab.
Keep going.
Collect as much as you can.
So what kind of so I guess the bigger question here is for you is, talked about the history of technology. Where do you think technology is heading in the future, and are you excited about it? Are you optimistic? One thing I'm quite keen to hear is a positive vision of a technological future. I don't know if you're the person for that, but I've heard
I could step into that.
Okay. Is that?
I'm not the most positive person out there. I'm not gonna lie.
I've heard lots of dystopian.
I'm not gonna lie.
Futures.
I think that we have to take things into perspective, right? My first computer was nothing like the computers we have today, right? I had a 28.8 modem, AOL Online. It took about 30 minutes to connect. We used to play Warcraft with our friends on a 28.8 modem. It used to freeze all the time. We used to coordinate attacks by calling each other up on our phones, and we can only do it with people who had 2 phone lines in their house because one phone was occupied by the computer, and one, this is this sounds totally insane to you.
I do remember the days when you couldn't be on the phone and on the internet at the same time.
Crazy, right?
I remember when broadband came along and it was this huge. Yeah.
At one point in my house, I was one of 8 kids. Like I said, we had 5 phone lines.
Okay.
So 2 for computer designated, 2 for phone, and 1 for emergency. Honestly, we had 5. The people came to the house all the time installing new phone lines. My poor old man. The phone bill was ridiculous, but so I think the way that things have changed just in my lifetime, things have gotten dramatically better. What you can do on smartphones. So, but I think the real problem is how you price these things and how you distribute the benefits, how they accrue, which people they accrue to, which actors they accrue to. And at the moment, they're clearly accruing to the monopolies and the tech sector, which means that the actual benefits being derived are pretty small to the average guy on the street. So yes, he gets great search functionality. Google's amazing. Everyone loves Google. No one's ever going to stop using it because they have the best search function. But are we actually benefiting much from being able to, search for Britney Spears news? Probably not, right?
They would argue you have access to the world's information, which
And which they do, and it's amazing. And I love, I got through grad school on Google Scholar, right? The answers to most of my questions on my syllabus were on Google Scholar, and the professors hadn't caught up, right?
Professors use Google Scholar too.
They do now. They didn't when I was in grad school. It was a long time ago, but.
I've had lots of recommendations on things on Google Scholar. You still have to read the papers, though. I mean, you couldn't just.
You still have to learn, right? You can't just. But for sure, like I was saying downstairs, I had a political philosophy course in college that I completely aced, and I didn't read a single book. I went to Wikipedia every time. It was the best source ever. I wrote all my papers reading Wikipedia, right? So it's a huge benefit for lots of people, but is it translatable into increased living standards, which is what fundamentally you care about, right? You want people to live better lives. You want them to have more leisure time. You want them to have less stress or more happiness. And is it doing that? It's clearly not, right? And so the gains from these technologies are not being shared equally. And I don't think that's a function of technology. I think that's a function of the way society is structured. It's more about how much bargaining power the average guy on the street has relative to Google and Facebook. They have none, and these big tech monopolies have tons of bargaining power.
That's big. I mean, I could ask you what next, but it's such a big question. I think lots of people are talking about things like this, but it's very unclear where you go next and how you. I mean, if it is just a question of redistribution or something, then we already have mechanisms for that. Or
you have mechanisms for redistributing wealth.
Yeah, but we don't.
Which don't work.
Okay. Yeah.
What you need is a mechanism for redistributing the fundamental origins of that wealth, which is the data.
Okay. So do you think that there will be this? So, an idea that I've heard discussed many times over the past few years is some kind of data passport or something where Ben controls his data, I control my data, and now, if Amazon wants to know what my browsing habits have been like in the past week, I can give them a little bit of it with my permissions, and I tell them what they can have, and in return, they give me something that has monetary value, or they give me, I sign up to this agreement, and they give me free Prime membership, or whatever it is, but I have the power to leave at any moment, or, if they ask for a specific piece of information, then I can always say no. Do you
absolutely
is that the future that we want?
I think so. I think it creates it rebalances the negotiating position. It allows you to say, here's an actual depiction of what I am, and therefore I only want to see these type of advertisements, or I only want to buy these type of products from these type of vendors.
What's the major blocker stopping that from happening?
It's mostly I think that you aren't able to access the data that is available about you. So Tesco holds a whole bunch of data that references you, and you have very limited access to it. You don't really know what they know about you, and they don't give you a copy of it. Google has a whole bunch of information about you, Facebook, and what can you do with it? You give it away for free in exchange for connecting with friends on Facebook and for searching things on Google, but which is some utility, but is it worth what you're giving in return? And the exchange is, in my perspective, isn't fair. You're not getting the benefit that you'd expect.
Right. Yeah, you're getting paid way less for it.
Way less.
It's actually worth.
Way less. And so you can do. There's a few things you can do. You can exercise your rights as an individual. Right. You have capacity to take, particularly in Europe. You don't have these rights in the U.S., which is, I think, why there hasn't been a solution. Most of the tech talent is still in the U.S., and so these people aren't looking at this problem in a way that's amenable. Because you have no real capacity to extract, the data that Kroger holds on you. If you're a Kroger customer in the U.S. and you shop there, they have, 10 years of your customer history, everything you've ever bought from them. Yeah. What can you do with that? They know tons about you, and you have no access to it. But in Europe, and particularly with the new GDPR regulations coming through, you have access to the data that any organization holds on you. So you can ask Tesco, what do you have? What do you know about me? What are the things that I bought? And you can request a copy of it. And so you can force them to basically hand over these valuable data sets. The question is then, what do you do with it? How are you as a user, as a layperson? I'm not a data scientist. What am I supposed to do with this, 10,000 row spreadsheet that Tesco has just sent me that tells me every item I've ever purchased from them in the last 5 years?
Yeah.
I can't do anything with it. And so you need to provide people with, in addition to just an ability to access the data, with a way to extract value from it.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me that you will never be able to stop or as far as I can tell, you won't be able to stop Tesco from collecting that data. Number
Absolutely
one.
not. It's their infrastructure,
yeah.
right? They own the payment infrastructure. They own the shop. They own the real estate that you're shopping in. So they have a right to the data just like you do, right? It's not your data. It's your and Tesco's data.
But if you have control over it, then in theory, what you could do is you could sell that data to Facebook if they wanted it.
Absolutely. Well, Tesco's doing it already. They're taking data on you and selling it to Facebook anyways. And so there's an opportunity for someone to say, we can get this data for you and sell it on your behalf.
Yeah. But then, so I mean, it does create a world in which there's even more data about you that these big players have access to. But I guess it means
it's not even more. It's what exists out there. All you're doing is centralizing it in your control. So you're saying that Tesco already has a copy of it. They're already selling it. Why don't I sell the same copy? Make a competing copy of the data out there, right? The beauty about the internet is that now information is non-rivalrous and non-excludable from an economic standpoint. Non-rivalrous meaning someone else consumes it. It doesn't diminish your utility, right? If I learn something about nuclear power, it doesn't reduce your utility from learning the same piece of knowledge about nuclear power. And non-excludable meaning if I consume this piece of information, I can't prevent you from excluding it because it's already public information. Whereas if I bite an apple, you can't take the same bite of an apple, so it's an excludable asset. So that's it from an information economics standpoint. That's what allows you to resell the same data over and over and over again, right? You can't prevent just because Google hasn't extracted value from this data doesn't mean that Facebook can't extract value from the same piece of data. They might have a better algorithm. They might have an additional data set they can marry to your data that allows them to extract some extra insight.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Does GDPR have any provisions for the formats of data or how it has to be, how open it has to be?
So actually, they say that it has to be in a machine readable format.
Okay.
So you can specify the format that you want. So you can, for example, I've requested my data from a whole bunch of different people, and you can request it comes back in the CSV format, which is a common usable data format, and they have to comply.
So is there a company that I can just sign up to and say, hey, I want you to do all of this stuff on my behalf, get all of my data in one place?
Not yet.
And should we just do it?
Not yet. We're working on it.
Sounds so easy.
We're working on it. It is easy.
I mean, now's the perfect time to do it. With GDPR is coming into play.
Absolutely.
Soon.
I think it
just
is easy.
Do it. Give everyone, you just sign up, and then we will petition all of these companies on your behalf. Are you in?
So John's one of my investors in this very business, and as a matter of fact.
Oh, really?
So this is what we're trying to do. Actually, we're trying to basically automate the process by which you go get your data from different organizations, and then we present it to you in a storage format that you control. So you take control of the data. We don't touch it. We don't see it. We don't store it.
Yeah.
We just get API access. So you give us permission to analyze it in a way that helps you make money, and then off you go. Cool. So yeah, we're trying. We'll see. We haven't done it yet, but we're in the process at the moment.
Let's talk off the record.
We're trying to provide the solution. Yeah.
I think that's quite exciting. I mean, I've heard about this idea so much, and if GDPR presents the springboard with which you can really make this a good product and make it really usable, and everyone, if someone can just literally give you an email address and basic information, and suddenly now they have access to 100 companies, and here's everything that 100 companies know
everything they know about you. And so the GDPR gives you a whole host of different rights. Not only do the business have to tell you what they know about you and give you a copy of that information in the format that you request, and they have to give it at zero cost. At the moment, it costs £10 per request. So coming to the GDPR, it's zero, so you can send as many of these as you want. As long as the request is reasonable, they have to satisfy it. So if you accrue data in interim in a month or a quarter period, at the end of the month or quarter, you can send another request, and they have to update you with the new data set.
Okay.
But they also have to tell you who they've sold the data to, for what purposes.
Okay.
And what those people are using the data for, and you can then go get the data from them and say, who are you selling it to? What are you using it for? So you can build a full chain, a full picture of who's has information about you, what they're doing with it, in a pretty quick and efficient fashion.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. If this doesn't happen in the next 3 or 4 years, then Newspeak has failed in some way. I mean, it seems like such an obvious thing to do.
It does. It does. Everyone says that when you tell it to them. No one's doing it, but you can do a whole bunch of things. So not only can you, help you target advertising. So you can say, you can predict. For example, we think we can predict with a pretty reasonable accuracy when someone like me is about to buy a coffee, and then we can sell that prediction to people who sell coffee. And So you can help a user monetize in that respect. We basically provide them with the tools, the technical tools that allow you to extract value from your data. So we can
put it on the blockchain, and then you're done.
So we're working on a blockchain solution.
Okay.
And the problem is blockchain developers are hard to find these days, right?
Yeah.
They're all busy doing other stuff. So I've got a few guys, but then the problem is that they're very expensive, and you can do most of this without. You don't need blockchain, right? You can do a lot of this with just regular data storage, and so we're going to build it in with normal storage.
I was just giving
crypto
you some
storage. Eventually, you do want to put it in the blockchain, right? And then
Yeah.
what you want is an immutable record of who's accessing your data when, and so every time there's a permission granted, you can say this person has accessed this data and done this analysis on it, and you put that in the blockchain. So there's no tampering, and there's no you have no risk of someone saying accessing data or analyzing it in a way that you don't consent to. Basically, the other thing GDPR does is it gives you power of much greater consent. Yeah. So when Tesco collects data about you, you get some consent, and you sign away some rights for them, and they can't do anything with the data that you don't specify in that contract. Yeah. But if they collected it 10 years ago, they didn't specify all these new things you can do with it, right? So they basically see, I can extract a whole bunch of value from it, but I don't have the consent to actually run the models that I want to do. And so with the new platform, you might be able to say, for example, that consent could evolve. Right. We could say, here are your customers. They understand that there's new things you can do with this data. They can sign this document, and then let Tesco do a whole bunch of new things with it.
Yeah, sweet. What do you think of CryptoKitties?
CryptoKeys.
CryptoKitties.
They're taking up the Ethereum network. Yeah. Yeah. I think we should make a Crypto Puppies.
We should.
Yeah. No. Crypto Puppies, no brainer.
Well, it's interesting because CryptoKitties was a very easy to understand platform built on the blockchain, where suddenly it's like, oh, I have to pay gas in order to make my transactions go through, and the more gas I pay, then the quicker my transactions go through, and every single thing I do costs money, and it's like crazy how it does teach you a lot about how blockchains work, and it kind of brings to light some of the issues that I guess people who know about this stuff already know about, but for people that are more casual, they may not have encountered these facts that, now you own this kitty, and who knows what it's worth? We don't know, but it's worth something to someone, and there are these limited things that you can do with it. And
did you ever grow up with Tamagotchi?
Yeah, this is very different.
Tamagotchi, it's pretty similar, isn't it? It's like
conceptually, it's a bit similar. But
do you remember Tamagotchi? Did your daughters do Tamagotchi? No, I didn't get that.
No, but you don't even have to look after the kitties. They don't even die if you don't take care of them. They just stay around, and then potentially get more valuable, potentially get less valuable. This to me, it feels much more like trading stocks to me, because you have to try and figure out what the market rate is.
Pure sentiment, but what makes an attractive kitty?
Nothing. You don't know exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
But some of them are more attractive than others.
So someone needs to build a model to predict attractive kittens.
Yeah, I was going to try and do that, because it can't be that difficult to do.
Yeah, trend following model.
Yeah, at the very least, you just given a kitty, find one that is very similar to it. Like take the lowest you just create a little space, find one that's quite similar. What did it sell for? Okay, most recent sale, that gives you a little valuation criteria. Anyway,
amazing. Crypto puppies. What are their popular pets?
I mean, CryptoKitties was quite well executed, though. It would take a reasonable amount of effort to be able to duplicate.
Who executed?
I don't know, but all the source code is online. You can read it, and it's quite simple. It's not crazy complex. There's like 7 or 8 contracts. I think the difficult part is all the artwork and things that they did. Like that was, if you're just approaching this, you don't think it's super necessary to create really nice artwork and have a great UI and all this stuff.
That's clearly what drives adoption, though, right?
I mean, yeah, that's without that, it would not have taken off. But it looks super cute, so that's why it's taken off.
So weird.
But the underlying principles and the underlying contracts are quite basic, which is good.
So weird. Have you heard about this CryptoKitties thing?
No.
So the Ethereum.
Yes, but I didn't understand it.
You trade kitties like so Tamagotchi.
When you say kitties, like you look at a screen
it's
and
a
you see your
it's a
own kitty?
it's a kitty. It's an
Yeah.
image of a cat that does some interaction. It's like an animated cat. So Tamagotchi was like a Japanese little pocket digital thing that my sisters used to carry around. and you would have to press buttons to feed them and press buttons to bathe them. And if you didn't do that, they would like sort of shrivel up. And if you did it properly, they would grow and like blossom, and you get a whole bunch of rewards. Like, and so this is like CryptoKitties now. It's like it's a Tamagotchi on the Ethereum cryptocurrency network. And the weird thing is that these cryptocurrencies people think are valuable for some reason. I don't quite understand what the value is derived from.
Tell me that he's like, I bought a bunch of them.
Cryptocurrency kitties. Marcel bought CryptoKitties.
He bought everything. No, not the kitties. He bought Ethereum.
Oh, he bought Ethereum.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a separate buy.
No. Yeah, this is so you can buy the actual kitty, which basically gives you control of one of these animated icons.
Yeah, so these are my kitties that I own. But
you
can
actually own kitties.
I own 4, yeah. It's great, but some of them are worth a lot. Like, if you look at these, so this one, for example, if you want to buy this one.
How much cash do you spend on these?
I spend like 0.2 Ethereum.
Which is, so Ethereum's what, $550 at the moment, something like that?
Yeah, something like that. So what's that?
So it's like $120 bucks?
Yeah.
That's a lot of money, man. You live in Newspeak House. Like, what?
It's true, but you don't realize, because, so one thing I noticed is that basically no one cares because they bought Ethereum when it was super cheap, right? So there's like, oh, I spent $100 on Ethereum, got like $600 out of it. So $500 is just whatever like money I didn't really expect. So why not just buy a kitty?
Dump it, buy a kitty.
Yeah, it's like,
and what is this? Is your kitty? You haven't even named it. It just says a number.
No, none of them have names. I don't think.
But can't you name it?
No, you can't name it. You can just breed it. But anyway, so the thing is, right? A lot of like in terms of people's financial planning, they're not like, oh, I hope, I'm relying on this X amount of money for whatever financial transaction. They're just like, oh, this is free money that I got. So they're just like much more happy to spend. You're much more happy to spend that than you would be spending real money that you earned.
But you know what this is mostly about? It's mostly about money laundering. If you're a guy in Russia and you're on sanctions list and I should probably show you Prince. I shouldn't say this on camera. No, we can edit this shit out tomorrow. Okay, if you're like a Russian oligarch, you're a Putin guy, and you need to get like a lot of money out of Russia,
right? And
you can't get it out because every bank is being tracked by the NSA and this kind of shit. What do? You fucking put the money into Bitcoin, and you sell the Bitcoin, you buy Ether, and then you sell Ether, and you buy Monero, and you sell Monero, and you buy IOTA, and then you sell IOTA, and you buy fucking CryptoKitties, and at the end of it, no one can track where this fucking money come from because you sell it to someone like you who gave some Russian oligarch. You're one of 10,000 people who gave this Russian oligarch $100, and he's been able to smuggle $100,000 out of Russia. And instead, he's buying a flat in London, driving up your housing prices.
Yeah, man. Bitcoin is not what we expected it to be. There was a piece this week that was all about that,
money laundering.
Like all of the things that Bitcoin was supposed to be like decentralized and secure and
Bitfinex is like recording handwritten transactions and storing it in bank vaults. I mean, it's nonsense.
It's like ridiculous.
It's totally nonsense. A massive bubble. Tulip mania.
Yeah, it's just a shame that so many people have made a lot of money on it though. It's like it's like a bubble until it pops. But yeah, all right, cool. Let's wrap up soon.
I can't believe. How long has this been going on for?
Like 50 minutes. Oh, wow.
50 minutes? That's really long. That's way longer than I thought. I can't believe we talked for 50 minutes about basically nothing.
Yeah, it's 11:25. I don't know how your startups and stuff doing. Are you interested to?
Well, so I've got a bit of money raised for this data thing.
Okay.
We'll see how it goes. I've been offered a spot at Entrepreneur First.
Oh, nice.
Which is cool.
Yeah.
They seem like a really great platform with lots of smart people.
Yeah.
I think I'm a little advanced for their program, but I'm happy to delay things. I think to make the most of it. So far so good. I'm just trying to refocus my career away from things that I think will be automated in the near future, which is reading financial news and financial reports and understanding what they mean and trying to predict what those words mean for financial markets. I just believe that most of that is going to be automated. Natural language processing is going to make most research economist strategist jobs like I did at hedge funds obsolete. And so I'm just trying to get in front of that wave and refocus my career into things. I got 2 kids. I got mouths to feed, just trying to make the most of it. Life's good. Nothing to worry about.
You excited for Christmas?
Excited for Christmas, yeah. Well, I'm Jewish, so Hanukkah, first night of Hanukkah was yesterday. Happy Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah.
My birthday is Christmas Eve, so...
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Happy birthday. I'll remember that.
Thanks, yeah. Good. Yeah. No one ever cared about my birthday because Christmas around. So we'll probably go for a bit of lunch, and that's about it. But my wife is 8 months pregnant, so she doesn't want to go anywhere for Christmas. We were invited to some family's house, but
sounds reasonable. I think
bit far. We're gonna stay home, so I think an M&S turkey in the oven. That sounds pretty good.